What's shaking and baking? Welcome one and all to Americans Learn, and today we return back to Sabaton history, which was recommended by all of you lovely, outstanding, beautiful people who told us about this wonderful YouTube channel. And today, as always, we're adding one more thing to the format, and that is the song that the band is also that this historic event is dedicated to. So you get not one but two videos, a history lesson. So first, stay tuned to get your learn on. And then let's enjoy the music afterwards. So without further ado, please be sure to like, comment, share, and subscribe, and hit that ring bell notification. The original video to this video we're checking out here on Americans Learn is in the description box below. And besides all that, you hip cool cats, please do the right thing. Support the original content creators. Follow Sabaton on all of their social media links because they do good stuff. So if you don't got to get it, and if you don't get it, well, you better figure it out. So grab yourself a tasty snack and a tasty beverage. And let's get ready to check this video out. It is titled The Lost Battalion, the Argonne Offense, Sabaton History, number 13. I am staying in order, as I should be. So let's check it out right now.
I'm Indy Nidell.
And I'm Joachim from Sabaton, and this is Sabaton History.
And we are standing in the Argonne Forest, where the Lost Battalion was lost during the First World War.
So let's find out more, shall we?
Oh, man.
How about let's not get lost in the sauce? Let's not get, lost in translation. But anyways, for those of you who don't know, the Lost Battalion also had a member, at least according to what I can remember. I'm probably wrong on this, but I think I'm right. None other than the great Chicago mobster himself, Alphonse Capone. Hashtag Alphonse Capone did nothing wrong. They only brought him in tax evasion. So in other words, they didn't get him associated with anything else. And that's how I feel. And you know what? Since I have supreme authority, I am correct.
The Argonne is rough terrain, rocky hills and thick woodland, and it had been in German hands since the end of 1914. Now, in late September 1918, the Argonne was an important part of the strongest German position, the Hagenstellung. And as the Allies finally began to break through, it comes down to the Americans to push through that fortified maze of bushes and ravines. But the American forces had hardly any experience in this terrain, especially not the 77th Division. That division was mostly from New York, and they were former street kids, baseball players, thugs, gamblers, clerks, gangsters, shoemakers, bouncers, everything. And
everybody who was anything, including a young Alphonse Capone.
Many were recent immigrants, men with Irish, German, Polish, or Russian heritage, Catholics, Protestants, and Jews. They were the most mixed bunch you could imagine, and just before they were shipped out to France, in April 1918, they had been bolstered with men from the Midwest. They were truly an all-American division. The Meuse-Argonne offensive had been making progress, and despite heavy casualties, the Americans advanced several miles towards the Germans. By the end of September, the 77th Division stood deep in enemy territory. But progress was still way too slow for High Command's liking, and orders came to keep up the pace. As long as the official casualty list was still comparatively low, there was no need to stop. But
Jeez, just to think you had some sort of bureaucrats and other people making the decision. So long as the death toll isn't that high enough, just keep pushing forward. What's the worst that could happen? God awful.
For the men on the ground, this was easier said than done. Major Charles Whittlesey, in command of 9 companies of the 77th, complained to General Alexander, in overall command, that their flanks were constantly exposed, as the French forces on the left and the 308th Regiment on the right were not keeping up with them. That was indeed a major problem, because once inside the forest, it was easy to lose track of time and direction. Since they had no wireless radio, they had to rely on maps and compasses. Time and again, they had been surprised by hidden German machine gun posts, and German infiltration teams were constantly trying to outflank companies that went too far ahead. More than once, Whittlesey's companies had lost contact with the forces on their flanks, right? General Alexander gave the strict order they were to go forwards, not backwards. Major Whittlesey wholeheartedly disagreed with Alexander, and he knew the reality of frontline combat better. But there was no point in arguing. So early on the morning of
Typical administrative BS. Leave it to somebody who's in a nice, cushy office to tell somebody who's actually out there in the dirt, getting their hands dirty, how they need to do their job. But you see that everywhere, in every business, in every act of social life. There's one person who's in the trenches, and there's another person who thinks they know how the world runs in their air-conditioned office. A show of hands. How many of you have been in that situation where somebody starts dictating to you how to run your operations or how to run your business or how to, really work? Type in the comment section below.
Of October 2nd, Whittlesey's battalion of roughly 550 men entered the forest, behind a creeping barrage where the German trenches were believed to be.
Oh, no.
As they marched forward, though, they noticed that the enemy was strangely silent. Here and there, terrified young boys and exhausted old men in dirty German uniforms came their way, surrendering without a fight. And hopes were high that Germany was finally coming to the end of its fighting capability, and breakthrough was close at hand. But once again, hidden machine guns and mortars opened up on them. Yet there was no continuous German line, just small nests of resistance. They pushed on until the evening and reached the top of a ravine where they suddenly stood at a major German strongpoint, but one without a single German soldier in sight.
What?
Maybe General Alexander had been right all along. Maybe the Germans were truly broken and in full retreat. Major Whittlesey ordered his men to move along, though he had not heard from the commanders on his flanks for quite a while. What he could not know was that the Germans were by no means broken. He had simply found a hole in their front line. The French and the 308th had made only little progress, and the only ones really pushing forward right now were Whittlesey's 9 companies, and the Germans were about to notice.
1918, the Great War rages on. Our battalion is lost in Meuse-Argonne.
By nightfall, the battalion had dug in on the side of a hill, and they arranged their machine guns around the perimeter. Major Whittlesey was then told that the men had heard German voices back from where they came. As daylight found them, so too did the German mortars. Whittlesey had around 500 men fit for action and had still heard nothing from his flanks. He sent out runners, and they thought they spotted German soldiers moving through the bushes. Now, Whittlesey had seen that before, the German infiltration tactics. So he sent out his strongest company, E Company. But were they really Germans out there or friendly runners trying to reestablish connection? A voice came from the bushes. "Americans?" it asked. A private replied, "Yes, E Company." The response to that was a hail of hand grenades and machine gun fire. E Company was no more. The Germans had found them, and Whittlesey's worst fears had come true. He was cut off, and not even his carrier pigeons seemed able to find their way. And the German artillery was getting closer. Whittlesey was in a tight spot. He could pull back and make a break for the American lines, but he had a lot of wounded, and going back would mean leaving them out in the open. He also had no idea how many Germans were there. He chose to stay. The Germans tested them, rushing from cover to cover, baiting the Americans to fire at them and reveal their positions, and German mortars caused heavy casualties. But the Americans had an advantage. They had German immigrants in their ranks who understood the carelessly shouted German commands. This foiled attacks until night fell. The pocket was shrinking, but still held. The water and food were running out fast. On the third day, water and food had run out, and the men resorted to searching German corpses for food. Whittlesey and the other officers did their best to keep up morale, and in the middle of nowhere, in the middle of France, the New Yorker attitude still came through. Every German attack was met with defiance, and every insult was promptly returned.
New York style, even though Chicago makes the better pizza. Just throwing it out there. Just throwing it out there.
The 77th would not be cowed and would not give up. In the afternoon, the shelling intensified and crept dangerously close. Then it finally hit their positions. Huge artillery shells rained down on them, and it became clear that it was American artillery. Whittlesey hurried to his birds. None had returned, and there was only one left, the handler's favorite, a black and white pigeon called Cher Ami. Whittlesey wrote, "Our own artillery is dropping a barrage directly on us. For heaven's sake, stop it." And his coordinates on a piece of paper, put it in an aluminum tube, and bound it to the bird's leg. All their hopes lay with this bird, and Cher Ami took off to the next tree, where she sat peacefully on a branch watching the men who kicked the tree and threw stones at the bird until she took wing again. The shelling...
What an arrogant... Oh, I would have a problem with that bird. Like, what the hell? Oh, man, that would be... Let's go ahead and... What? Stupid animal.
Continued, and even got worse as the Germans joined in. Soon, German soldiers were breaking into the pocket, hurling grenades as they came down the slope. Now, had they intended to kill all of the Americans, they would probably have succeeded, but instead they tried to take prisoners. This gave the battalion a chance to fight back. Machine guns ran hot. Soldiers fired at point-blank range from a wall of corpses, resisting capture once more, forcing the Germans to retreat. And night fell once again.
Chose not to surrender. They chose victory or defeat. Fallen brothers resting by their feet.
Unknown to them, their story was getting attention. At first, politically, both American and German high commands knew that the destruction of the pocket would be a propaganda coup. The Germans could boast how superior their troops were, and the Americans would face political backlash back at home, and maybe even be taken out of the line. Both sides increased efforts to find them. As morning broke on the fourth day, Whittlesey and his men had no food, little ammo, and most of their machine guns were destroyed. The artillery barrage came back, but this time, it did not hit their position. Instead, falling on the Germans further north, Cher Ami had found its way to the American headquarters. With a shrapnel wound and a leg blown off, she had still given their coordinates to headquarters. So now, American command knew where they were, but still didn't know their situation. In fact, Alexander was writing out orders that Whittlesey should resume the attack northwards. The Germans made plans to finally destroy the pocket. The next night, several groups of veteran
Leave it to some general to come up with a FUBAR decision.
storm troops appeared at the front, ready to move in, but this time they would not take prisoners. Day 5. At midday came panicked shouts. Liquid fire sprayed the position, and a shower of grenades fell. German flamethrowers came down the slope, while from the flanks, storm troops tore through the bushes. A violent melee began. Engulfed in smoke and flames, the pocket turned into a no-holds-barred brawl to the death. The Americans engaged the stormtroops with knives, clubs, and bayonets. Officers fired their revolvers at point-blank range. No quarter was given, no mercy was shown, and the Americans held. Barely, but they held. The 6th day of combat began. The men were exhausted, mentally and physically. The mood now was fatalistic, and many wrote their final letters, not expecting to come out of this alive. But the Germans sent in a letter of their own, asking for surrender.
To which then the American commander said, nuts. Wait, wrong war. That was the second one. That was the second World War. How interesting is it? Once the Germans think that the Americans are surrounded, now's the time to surrender. No, we don't.
Whittlesey made clear there would be no surrender. High Command had sent out volunteers to establish contact. Many were intercepted by the Germans, but some eventually broke through and came in contact with the rest of the 77th Division, trying to fight its way through to the lost battalion. Finally, on the 8th of October, after 7 days of combat, the lost battalion was found.
They would never comply, they would rather die. But through the blockade, they were finally saved.
Food and water were rushed into the exhausted men. From the 554 men that went in, 197 were killed, and 150 were either missing or captured by the enemy. Only 194 men walked out of the pocket under their own steam, but most of them were wounded. Nearly overnight, it became the biggest American story of the war. War reporters rushed into the scene and immediately interviewed the men, which is why we have such a detailed account of the fighting.
You heard it from all the soldiers on the ground. My goodness. Talk about a brutal, brutal situation.
Major Charles Whittlesey and 2 other captains would receive the Medal of Honor for their actions.
They should, after dealing with the incompetent general. My goodness. Again, their left and right flanks weren't keeping up with them. They were told to keep pushing forward, keep pushing forward. Then that general comes up with a big brain and says, oh, you guys should keep on advancing. No.
And Cher Ami was even awarded the Croix de Guerre.
Cher Ami. Okay, she deserves some credit, but the fact that she flew out and decided to sit on a tree, no. And I don't want to hear that crap of, well, hey, birds are related to dinosaurs, so technically they're royalty. No. I don't want to hear that stuff. She deserves some credit, but the fact that she decided to sit on a branch and just sit there and be all pretty, no, that's a no bueno in my book.
But all of the men had become heroes to the American public, and stories and books were written about them. They really became the all-American heroes of the war. And to this day, books, films, and songs are written about them and their stand as they have entered the realm of American legends.
As they made their stand against regarded demand. It's surrender or die, and the stakes are high. In or die, you can tell there's no goodbye.
Okay, Lost Battalion, the song. What do you got?
Nothing.
Now, this is an interesting idea for a Sabaton song. How did you come up with the idea in the first place?
Well, you know, over the years, we've asked our fans from all over the world to give us ideas, send us emails or give us books and such. And this one is actually one of those stories. Okay. Many years back, a friend named Mike gave us a book called The Lost Battalion, actually.
So you guys do actually go through, like when people send you books and things, you do actually read them. And
that's how you know you got a dedicated band, because they listen to their fans and they read the content or whatever's sent to them, and they have follow through. That's why Sabatons are in a special place in my heart.
Yes, I mean, not everything, obviously. We get a lot of books, but everything that we think looks interesting and can be inspiration for a song. Over the years, I don't know how many thousands of emails we have got. Yeah. And I can honestly say we have read everyone, and they're all saved, except when you suggested Star Wars or such.
Okay, well, when they do their album Star Wars, we'll have to be on location for that, too.
Yes.
You can write in and ask if you want us on the ice planet Hoth or on the desert planet Tatooine when we film the Star Wars ones. Because
the Battle of Hoth should be the best one.
Those will be fun to do.
Yeah, but it'll be far, far away.
But we know there's a cantina where we can get drinks.
Oh, yes, that's good.
Before I forget, I'll tell you what. In the description, there'll be a link to that book so that anybody, because you said it was good, yeah?
Very good.
And it inspired the song.
Yes.
Now, what about the song itself? Is it just a traditional, straightforward Sabaton
No,
song?
this is very different. This one actually has a new drum kit that isn't real. I had this idea, and I had it for many, many years, but it was never turned into a reality until now.
Okay.
And the kick drum is a machine gun.
Okay.
The snare drum is a 9mm handgun.
Yeah.
And this is kind of macabre, but the hi-hat is a bayonet going into flesh.
Can we hear some of that right now?
That's pretty badass.
There it is.
All right, there we are. See, I love that when that happens.
Yes.
I can also call down thunder. Never mind.
No, but it's really this idea I had for a long time, and sound production-wise, it's a nightmare, you know?
Yeah.
So I basically took the sounds of these machine guns, 9mm guns, and everything, and I tested everything.
Yeah.
And I built, obviously this is computer-based samples, but I built a drum kit out of, well, sounds of death, I guess.
But that, I guess, it will bring home what these guys were actually facing. I mean, they're there for days. They're under fire, not just from the Germans, under fire from their own guys.
Yeah, and it's from that point of view, it's really one of my favorite things, because finally and crazy idea I had actually worked out.
Now, I can't help but ask, how are you going to do that live?
We have done it live a couple of times, actually.
With stabbing someone in the bayonets repeatedly?
Yeah, actually.
Yeah, who was the person who was tribute?
Yeah, the problem is miking them up, you know.
Oh, yeah, because they go, ow, 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 ow.
Yes.
Just the bayonet noise. That's all we want.
You need to be quiet. No, but we actually for that, Hannes is playing it live, but it's triggered by samples.
Okay.
So he's like we have triggers on the drums. So when he's punching everything, it's still the sample drums we hear. We mix them with acoustic drums, so it's a mix there.
Yeah.
Okay.
But yeah, it's played live because we don't want to put it on a drum machine when we have an awesome drummer, you know.
Well, that's absolutely true.
The great war rages on. Our battalion is lost in the Argonne.
All right, everybody. That was Lost Battalion from The Last Stand, which came out a couple of years ago. And if you don't know that one, you should definitely get that one. And you should also get the new one, The Great War, since we're here filming on locations from The Great War.
Yeah, that's it for today.
See you soon.
They would rather die.
Outstanding.
All right, everyone. As you can see, we have put the effort on. It's time for you to do it. So become a patron and do it now, all right? And don't forget to subscribe to Sabaton, Time Ghost, and World War II. Hope to see you all on the road very soon because we are releasing a kick-ass album. So let's do this.
As they should. So there you go. So real quick, because we're doing this as a special treat for all you lovely people, we're going to be playing The Lost Battalion. But before we do, I will not be pausing. I will be letting the song play in its full entirety. I'll be giving my final thoughts at the end of it. But first, again, for those of you who are unfamiliar, because I'm trying to read up more about the First World War, I'm realizing that there's a lot that I don't know about it, about the heroes, the triumphs, the tragedies, the glory and the gore, the battles, the political intrigue, and so much more. And there are stories that I have never heard of. There are people that I have never heard of who played an impact in a global conflict that was supposed to be the last of all the great conflicts, but was a precursor of something far, far, far more deadlier in the future. But nonetheless, folks, if there's any recommendations that we should check out about the First World War, type it in the comment section below. But until then, let's listen to the song The Lost Battalion by Sabaton.
Of their land as they made their stand, they stood strong and the legend still lives on. The great war rages on. Our battalion is lost in the Argonne. Under fire, there's nothing they can do. There's no way they can get a message through. Suffer heavy losses as the battle carries on. Liberty division standing strong. Surrender or die, and the stakes are high. They live and they die, there's no time for goodbye. Weapon in hand as they made their stand, still disregard in demand. They would never comply, they would rather die. Not through the blockade, they were finally saved. Friendly fire munitions running low. The supplies they were dropped upon their foe. 1918, the war still rages on. The battalions still trapped in the Argonne. Chose not to surrender. They chose victory or defeat. Fallen brothers resting by their feet. Far from their land as they made their stand, but disregarded demand. It's surrender or die, and the stakes are high. They live and they die, there's no time for good.
Beautiful. That, by far, was an outstanding song. And obviously, you could hear the attention to detail, too. But, you know, when you hear the lyrics, far from their land, and it's where they made their stand, obviously, 1918 is when the United States thoroughly got activated and was on the front lines during the First World War. And in that, many of those young men saw man's inhumanity to man. Obviously, that was nothing new to the Germans, the French, or the British as they were doing ongoing trench warfare. But this was a moment in history where, again, the United States, we played a pivotal role, but obviously the Lost Battalion had to deal with a lot of administrative BS because of some general telling his soldiers on the ground to keep pushing forward and ignore the casualties. But were it not for the brave officers and soldiers who were there on the front line, and yes, to some extent, the little carrier pigeon too, you know, we were able to show our presence and who we were. And obviously, it's a New York story, you know. Shout out to all the brave New Yorkers from no matter what part of life they lived in. I know that. Hold on, let me just double check this too. Al Capone, Lost Battalion. Ah. Hold on. Ah. All right, never mind. It's a story he made up. I'm being foolish. Was Al Capone a World War I veteran? Capone, however, would attribute his scar wounds to what he received while fighting the infamous Lost Battalion. The fact that Capone never spent 1 minute in the army was a minor point, apparently. Ah. So I guess good old Al Capone never truly served. Okay. Well, that's why we have the interwebs, and that's why we also have some additional information too. So there. He never served. Okay. So I guess maybe I'm also confusing a little bit of the TV show Boardwalk Empire. Never confuse TV show with history, but hey, you live, you learn, and then you move forward. But perhaps maybe someday we could do an American Learn series on some of the great infamous cartels that were in the United States way back in the day. Perhaps. If that's something all of you would like to see, type it in the comment section below. But also, folks, again, huge shout out to Sabaton, as they have done great work. Be sure to check out their YouTube channel, Sabaton. Be sure to check out their other channel, Sabaton History. Be sure to support them on Patreon. Check out the original video link in the description box below. And as always, keep your heads on a swivel, drink water, and keep on winning. I'm up out of here.